In this video, we will give a brief introduction to the basic workflow of REA. REA, which stands for Risk Evaluation Assistant, is an open-source decision support tool to perform risk-based anonymization. Let's begin by creating a simple dataset. To do this, click the plus button. First, we need to give the dataset a name. Adding a description is optional. We also have the option to choose which users we want to share the dataset with right from the start. We can create the dataset in two ways, either by dragging and dropping a file into the designated area or by creating it manually. For this demonstration, I will use the first option and simply drag and drop our file. Next, in the Data Tables Preview section, we see the result of the parsing process. At this point, the user has full control to modify the data structure. You can change field names, adjust field types based on the provided examples, exclude fields that should not be taken into account during the assessment, or delete fields entirely. It is important to mention that only metadata are stored from the dataset, specifically the field names and data types. Actual record values are never saved to the server. Once we are happy with the structure, we simply save the dataset. With our dataset created, the next step is to perform a dataset assessment. To do this, navigate to the Actions section of your dataset and click the Add Assessment button. First, we need to provide a name for this assessment. As you can see, REA automatically suggests a name for us, so for this demonstration, we will leave it as it is. The assessment process is divided into two main parts. In the first part, the user completes a set of invasion of privacy questions. These questions are designed to determine the data's overall sensitivity and estimate the potential harm to the individuals if a data breach were to occur. Next, we perform the Attribute Risk Assessment. Here, we evaluate each field based on 4 key metrics: replicability, availability, distinguishability, and sensitivity, rating each as low, medium, or high. There is also a checkbox to specifically flag any field that serves as a direct identifier. Once we're finished, we simply click the Create Assessment button. The next step is to create a data recipient profile. To do this, click Recipients in the main sidebar navigation. To add a new recipient, simply click the plus button at the top right. Here, the only mandatory field is the name. Optionally, we can provide a description and a link to the organization if available. Just like before, we can also select specific users to share this recipient profile with. Once we are ready, we click the Create button. Just like we did with the dataset assessment, we now perform a recipient assessment by clicking the relevant action button. Again, REG suggests a name automatically. We can change it if needed, but for now we will leave it as is. There is also a checkbox here that if we check it, a contact information section appears. This allows us to add optional specific details about the recipient, such as the contact name, department, and email address. The assessment consists of 2 questionnaires. The first covers mitigating controls. These questions evaluate the strength of the technical, legal, and procedural safeguards at the recipient's site. The second questionnaire focuses on the motives and capacity of the recipient. This section assesses how likely the recipient is to attempt re-identification based on their incentives, whether financial or malicious, and the technical resources they have available. Once we have answered all the questions, we simply click the Create Assessment button. Once we have the dataset and recipient assessments ready, we can proceed to create a data sharing activity. This step combines the two assessments to generate the final dynamic report. To do this, we go to Data Sharing Activities in the main sidebar. And then click the plus button. First, we enter a name for the activity. Then, we use the drop-down menus to select the specific dataset and recipient, along with their corresponding assessments. In addition, there is a dedicated checkbox that allows us to override the attribute risk assessment specifically for this sharing activity. This feature allows us to modify the risk levels of specific attributes if the context of this particular scenario requires it. For this demonstration, we will leave it as it is. Once we have made our selections, we simply proceed by clicking the Create button. By creating this data sharing activity, a dynamic report is generated automatically. To view it, simply click the relevant button in the Actions section. The report is divided into two main parts. The first part displays the risk analysis results, which are derived from the answers we provided in the assessments. For each category, we can see a horizontal color bar and a donut chart showing the percentage of yes, no, and unknown answers. Below that, we have the overall risk section. This lists the recommended re-identification risk threshold, which is directly linked to the calculated level of invasion of privacy. We also have the option to manually define our own risk threshold here. Next is the context risk, which states the derived probability of an attack. This is calculated based on the protection provided by mitigating controls and the threat level posed by motives and capacity. Finally, there is the data risk, which provides the recommended threshold specifically for anonymization. The second part of the report covers the attribute risk assessment results. Here, we have the ability to modify the identifiability and sensitivity thresholds, which determine how fields are characterized. For example, if we increase the identifiability threshold from 5 to 6, the system automatically updates which fields are considered quasi-identifiers. Finally, the report allows us to save its status or download the entire document in PDF format.